The third set of books that I want to show you as part of this spotlight session are not specifically maps or atlases, but they are related to the notion of setting down on paper the physical geography of a place. So these are two panoramic views of various different places. So the first one I want to show you is this one, and this one was printed in 1844. Sorry, I should leave it so you can see the rather lovely label on the front. So a panoramic view of Funchal, Madeira. Lovely salmon pink front pages. And this one has a nice title page. Oops, sorry. There is a dedication to the Queen. There we are. Panoramic view of the city of Funchal, sketched on the spot by Mrs. Reginald Southwell Smith from Dorset. This is the second edition, so it was drawn a little bit earlier. But this is the panorama itself. So I shall step back so Mel can do a panning shot of this panorama. So this is a design drawn from one single location, trying to show the whole of what the artist could see. And this was drawn by, as it said, one of these things where in publications wives weren't allowed to have their own names, but Mrs. Smith was born Emily Genevieve Hanson Simpson. She was born in Paris, but to a family that lived in Bath, and she was educated in Bath. She was born in 1817. She lived until 1877, and she is renowned as a British draftsperson. So she was an illustrator and also produced these kinds of accurate geographical illustrations. So she married the Reverend Reginald Southwell Smith in 1836, and they had 12 children. But in 1841, the family moved to Madeira because her husband had tuberculosis, and it was thought that the atmosphere, the air there, would be helpful to him. And it turned out that he did improve whilst they were there. But they lived in Madeira for 2 years, so from 1841 to 1843. So that would have been the time when she drew this illustration. They lived in the town of Funchal, as it was then called. It's now called Quinta de Nora. If anyone will excuse my terrible accent there. But while she was there, she drew this illustration. And Emily Genevieve is quite well remembered. There's a lot of her diaries survive and are within the Dorset Record Office, and they document this time when she was an English person living abroad in Madeira, as well as other points in her life. So she was quite interesting anyway, and this illustration is, as well as being very beautiful, quite a nice example of these panoramic views. Now the other one which I have to show you is huge, so I'm not sure that it's actually going to fit on the table. So I shall fold Madeira up and get out Constantinople. Now this one doesn't have the same sort of title page, but it folds out in both directions. Yeah, this is definitely not going to fit on the table. Let's do one side first and then the other. So I shall step back again. This is Panorama of Constantinople. It has two views basically, the left-hand side and the right-hand side. The left-hand side that we're looking at now is a general view of the Bosphorus from Constantinople to Rumeli Hisari, taken from Asia. So this is a view of the European coast of the Bosphorus as drawn from a viewpoint on the Asian coast of the Bosphorus. And these were drawn, there is a tiny little note in the bottom left-hand corner when Mel gets there, which says that these were drawn after nature by J. Schrantz. And Schrantz, Joseph Schrantz, was born in Malta in 1803, lived until the mid-1860s, we're not sure about exactly when he died, and he spent a lot of his time in Istanbul, Constantinople as it was then known, and he created a lot of these sorts of illustrations. Many of which, such as this one, were produced by the lithographer Léon Jean-Baptiste Sabatier, who lived in Paris from 1827 to 1887. So these were produced for the European market. and they were these views of Constantinople were particularly popular in the mid-19th century because there was a heightened interest in Constantinople in Britain and France at the time because of the European military presence in the Crimea, which was just on the other side of the Black Sea. And so views of Constantinople were very popular, as I say, back in Britain and France at the time. So let's fold this one up, if I can remember how it folds. That looks about right. Yeah, there we go. Slide it along and I'll open up the other side so you can see the other edge of the Bosphorus coast. There we go. So this view that you're looking at on this side of the book is a general view of the Rumeli Hisari Bosphorus in the Black Sea, taken from Asia. So this is basically the other part of the coast from what the first one was. Now these sorts of books were very popular. They're referred to as panoramic views. They're not strictly speaking actual panoramas, because a panorama is a view 360 degrees from one viewpoint. And that type of painting was something which became very popular in the late 18th century. The term was coined by a gentleman called Robert Baker, who did a painting of Edinburgh with a 360-degree panorama, and this was displayed in London on the inside of the walls of a specially built rotunda. So you could go in and stand in the middle and actually turn round through 360 degrees and see a view as if you were looking out over Edinburgh. So this type of view became very, very popular. It was partly popular because it was accessible to people who couldn't actually travel to see these sorts of destinations, which means that this kind of panoramic view, which while not a full 360-degree panorama, is basically a long view of usually an exotic location. These became very, very popular for people to be able to look at and to feel almost, they give almost a sense of being there within a place that they wouldn't be able to actually get to physically themselves. Now these sorts of books, there are many of them still in existence. Their popularity waned obviously with the coming of photography and with the way that travel became much more easily accessible to people with less income and people from lower social demographics. So they then became less, because they are quite unwieldy, as you have seen from me trying to get this one out on the table in here. But they are in their way very beautiful, and they tend to be very accurate as well. The accuracy of the layouts tend to be very, very good in these. So they're quite interesting things to have.